Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we have another very cool looking Schleich figure to take a look at. This is another figure that was requested recently, though I can't quite remember who it was that requested it to come up for review, but we have it now here, and this is the newer version of the Schleich Therizinosaurus. There are actually two different paint variants of this figure out that I know of personally. I don't think there's any other ones, but personally I'm pretty sure from my experience, there's only two, and this is the newest of the two. This one is still readily available. You can find it online, of course, at the Schleich website, and definitely a fun looking repaint for this figure. I actually really quite like the paint scheme on this. It's the first time I've had the opportunity to really take a look at this figure in person. I have seen it in stores before, but I'm usually so busy I end up passing right by it. I don't really have time to check it out in store, so this is my first time really getting a nice, good, solid look at the figure, and I must say they've come up with a really nice, striking looking paint scheme for the Therizinosaurus, something that I personally wouldn't think looked so good, but it really does. The red coloration on the face and then leading out onto the tail adds a really nice element of flashiness on an otherwise quite dark looking paint scheme for the Therizinosaurus. This sculpt we're all very familiar with. We know it's not exactly an accurate Therizinosaurus, but it's kind of like your Schleich version of it, which is pretty much their own style at this point of creating kind of their own stylized versions of dinosaurs, and that's definitely what we see here with this Therizinosaurus. So I'm really quite excited to go ahead and take a closer look at this one, so let's jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Therizinosaurus, you could see straight away that from a detailing standpoint, as far as a Schleich figure goes, you pretty much never have to be concerned with not getting a highly detailed sculpt, as this one, as per usual, sports a very highly detailed sculpt. You can see the head sculpt as far as the detailing standpoint. We have some really nice scales there in the kind of palate area, almost some rough and rugged looking skin texture there to the lower jaw, as well as some beautiful creasing and wrinkling there around the eye. You have the nostrils sculpted out up here at the snout, and you also have a really nice looking beak sculpted out. Detail wise, you can see lots of cracks and crevices in there, and I like that they've painted it with a light gray, but kind of brought some of this black down to highlight the early part of the beak that's connected to the face. Really, I think, amps up the appeal factor to that area quite nicely. We also have a really nicely painted eye with a yellow and a black pupil. Does seem to sport a nice gloss coat, giving it a pretty realistic looking eye shine. And we have a nice black for the lower jaw, as well as a little hint of flashiness with the red there kind of hanging off of those feathers on the lower jaw. We also have some nice red here in the face, as well as a black that kind of circles around and highlights the eye area, the eye socket. And then this red kind of runs down here but tapers off before we get back into the body. So it's actually a really nice dark red, so we have a nice flashy appearance for the head sculpt of the Therizinosaurus. You can see detail-wise up here on the top of the head, it also looks quite nice, really nice looking skin texture and tons of creasing and wrinkling here in the neck, showing off the turn that we have going on with the head sculpt of the Therizinosaurus, but you can see that wrinkling looks great the entire way down. We also have an articulated jaw for our Therizinosaurus. We have sculpted out some teeth inside the mouth here. The Therizinosaurus actually looks very angry as far as the Schleich version, like he almost looks like a predator with the incredibly angry look to his face, but at the same time, I've always kind of felt like this sculpt is meant to imply like a Therizinosaurus defending itself, so that would kind of give you the reasoning for the very angry look on the head sculpt of the Therizinosaurus, because he's not going to look super happy and chipper if he's defending himself against a predator, and I really feel like they've actually captured that appearance and brought a little bit of life to the model itself, as opposed to just creating kind of a Therizinosaurus model. They've created something that has some personality to it, I'll put it that way. You can see that the inside of the mouth also sports some pretty nice looking detail as far as like the skin flap here on the side of the mouth, as well as almost like a little bit of a creamy type of a color in there. You can see the tongue is sculpted out quite nicely detailed as well, painted with a dark red that's actually similar to the red that we see up here on the face. And even though the claws were trying to get in the way there, you can kind of see like the detailing there on the back of the mouth also looks quite nice. The jaw also articulates beautifully, so that is definitely a plus. As we continue to move down the neck, you start to see some feathers pick up it starts out real subtle, like just a few kind of like stragglers as far as the feathers go. But as we continue to move down into the body, you can see that it takes up the abundance of the body as far as the feather detail goes. Except here on the underside, you can continue to see the skin textured area. You can also pick out the throat of the Therizinosaurus. As we move down here into the arm, you can pick up on some very nice muscle definition. The arms are kind of held into the body a little bit, but those fingers are spread out nice and wide, and those claws, the trademark Therizinosaurus claws, look very intimidating, again giving me that feeling that it's about to defend itself, showing off the very defensive appearance to the hands. If you put the hands up, because the arms actually articulate, so you can give it this type of a look, you can kind of see how it 110% looks like it is about to swipe at some sort of an animal near it. And I really do actually quite like that. I also like the fact that the arms are articulated, so you can kind of put them down in a more natural position, close the mouth, and he looks a little bit more at ease. Or you can open the mouth and again put the arms up, and he now, without question, looks like he means business. So you can have yourself a happy, peaceful Therizinosaurus or a very angry, defensive version. That's really up to you. As you continue to move along the feathers here in the back, I like that you can actually see some of the light gray here through the feathers. I feel like that is a very nice realistic aspect to the paintwork of the model, but the feather detail continues to look quite nice throughout the entire animal. You can see it running down here into the stomach region as well. As you move down into the thigh and calf look extremely muscular, big and bulky. You have a kneecap present right here in the front of the leg. Some more really nice skin texture as you move down the course of the leg, with a little hint of that red showing up here in the shin area leading down into the foot. The foot sculpt also looks quite nice. We have some nicely sculpted out nails painted with a very dark gray. Beautiful detailing in that foot sculpt. You also have dew claws on your Therizinosaurus. There's some very nice kind of creasing and stuff right here, kind of showing off the movement of the leg. And as we lead out into the tail, you see more of that feather detail, as well as some feathers that lead out here on the side of the tail. And that's where that red pops back up here in the feathers of the Therizinosaurus, but the kind of like softer feathering remains that black coloration as we lead out to that tip. And you can see a little bit of a curve to the tail, and I like that the black just kind of like splotches down erratically, just showing off some really cool coloration to our Therizinosaurus. There's not too much difference on this side compared to the previous side, because the dinosaur is kind of just standing up tall, trying to show off how intimidating it is. And that's another thing. Obviously, Therizinosaurus stands kind of upright, but this one is really upright. So I feel like that's another aspect of the model that shows that it is in a defensive position, trying to defend itself, because it's kind of standing upright, trying to make itself appear even larger than it actually is, which it is already a pretty big animal. But you can see that we have that same style of detailing over here, as far as like lots of creasing and stuff to the skin of the neck. And you can see how that red kind of tapers back off and then just gets lost amongst the black area here. More really nice detail here in the side of the throat, leading down into the throat region itself. And you can see lots of creasing and everything there. Beautiful detailing as we move down here into the stomach region. Look at how incredible that skin texture looks. Just phenomenal detailing on the part of Schleich. You can see that detail-wise, though, here up on the back, it looks very similar to what we had seen on the previous side, as far as the feather detail, as well as the leg sculpt in general, the muscle definition, everything, because, again, the legs aren't too far off. They're almost in a similar position, but you can see that the other leg here, the opposing leg, is a little bit further forward. This one is back a little bit and just has a slight tilt to the ankle. The tail, again, looks very similar to what we had seen on the previous side, with a slight curve, but you can see that red pickup back here along those really cool feathers that stick out along the side. And the detailing here on the underside continues to look great from a detailing standpoint the entire way out of the tail. Just a beautiful sculpt as far as the fine detail goes, and another really cool version of the Schleich Therizinosaurus. I will say I definitely think I like this one better than the previous one. I feel like the color scheme that they've gone with on this one is a lot nicer, a lot more natural than the older Therizinosaurus from Schleich. But as far as a size goes, for a length, if we go from the tail to the head, you are looking at about 10 inches or about 25 and a half centimeters roughly. And then for a height, about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is the Schleich Tyrannosaurus, as well as Robert Muldoon, and the Attack Pack Colovosaurus from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Therizinosaurus. And you can really get a good idea of how large the Therizinosaurus is from Schleich right here, especially with the Schleich Tyrannosaurus, which is definitely a fairly large figure, and the Therizinosaurus here pretty much towers over the Rex. Not super towering over, but is definitely quite a bit taller than our Rex, and obviously much taller than the Mattel figures here. And then for a second comparison, and something that I think is really cool about the Schleich line, we have the adult Therizinosaurus with the juvenile Therizinosaurus. So you can create yourself kind of a little family of Therizinosaurus here with the Schleich line, and I love how they've kind of kept the paint schemes very similar, but altered them a little bit to kind of show the juvenile-like status of the one here on the right, with having more of a reddish tone to the majority of the body. And it almost looks like as time goes on, the red coloration to the feathers that make the juvenile a little bit brighter, a little bit flashier. It almost looks like they kind of taper off and transition to a more black-looking appearance to the feather detail there on the back. So really cool on the part of Schleich to give you two different versions of their Therizinosaurus. So this newer version, not brand new because it's actually been out for a few years now, but it's the newer version of the Schleich Therizinosaurus, the repaint of the previously released Sculpt, is actually quite nice, and I definitely think I enjoy this one more so than the older version from Schleich, because the paint scheme on this one, in my opinion, is just a little bit more natural, a little bit nicer looking. The older one was a little bit flashier than I feel like it may be, and you know, who really knows, because we've never seen a Therizinosaurus in real life, but I personally like this paint scheme more so than the older one. I feel like they've done a good job as far as giving it like a little bit of flashiness with those reddish tones, but keeping the reddish tones kind of darker and more natural, but then adding in that darker appearance overall to the body with the variations of blacks. And even though the gray is light, it's not a super light gray, so it still kind of continues the darker appearance to the body overall, and I really do quite like the paint scheme they've come up with for the figure. The sculpt itself is super highly detailed, like you always find when it comes to a Schleich figure. However, it's again not the most accurate interpretation of a Therizinosaurus, but the figure has actually been out for a very long time, so at this point, you know, it's one of those things where like the figure's been out so long, you can't really judge it on accuracy because of the fact that things change so often when it comes to the way we perceive dinosaurs. So judging a figure that was released years ago on accuracy really isn't fair. And in general, Schleich always kind of has their own more stylized versions at times of their dinosaurs. They do occasionally release figures that are, you know, close to what an accurate dinosaur would look like, but they also kind of have their own stylized versions, and I feel like this one here is basically what you find with the Therizinosaurus, as the person who sculpted it kind of took like some artistic liberties to it, and I personally do quite like the sculpt. I've always been a big fan of it. I've enjoyed it from the initial Therizinosaurus, and I definitely enjoy it yet again now with this newer version. So if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase this on the Schleich website. So make sure you check the link in the description, head on over there and purchase yourself this very cool Therizinosaurus, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.